We're gonna do it in one take, you frickers. Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Becki.
We are registered dietitians that are passionate about food as medicine, and we use functional approaches to whole body health.
In today's video, we will be covering various forms of fasting, tools that you can use during your fast, and some of the questions that you guys probably have about what qualifies as a fast. So before we dive in today, let's just unpack real quick for listeners the benefits of fasting.
So intermittent fasting, as simple as it sounds, simply not eating, taking times, intermittent windows without eating. And the benefits are great. By not eating, we tend to see overall calorie reduction, which can lead to weight loss. And there's actually hormetic influences, meaning that the process of fasting or restricting from eating can drive hormonal response in the body that can increase mechanisms for metabolism. We can see hormones like HGH go up, which has muscle sparing effects. We can see a favorable influence on our insulin levels going down and better blood sugar control. We can see influence on cholesterol and liver health with fasting. And we can also see outcomes for cognition. There's a lot of clinical evidence out for support for Alzheimer's, dementia, and brain health, as well as the process of autophagy, which is this cellular cleanup where our body is able to rid pathogens, foreign invaders, or dysfunctional components of our cells, basically taking out the trash within our body and cleaning things up so that we have optimal function.
So a lot of benefits and kind of a lot of different ways to slice this fasting thing. So in terms of the various forms of fasting, I think the most common that we recommend clinically and personally practice, at least when I'm not pregnant, is the 16-8 fast. So this would be 16 hours without food and 8 hours of an eating window. And typically I recommend doing this where you just, get the permission slip to skip breakfast. You kind of cut off your eating at about 8 p.m., 7 or 8 p.m., and then just skip breakfast and go through till lunch. And that's probably the easiest one, I would say, to employ.
Most definitely. And then extending that a little bit further becomes an 18-6. So maybe breaking your fast at 2 p.m. instead of noon, which is another common fast form.
Absolutely. And sometimes we'll feel really natural on a crazy work day where you're just not hungry or don't have time to step away from your desk. And I think that's the beauty of fasting, is it frees us up for having to constantly think about the next meal. And then another form of fasting that I think has grown in popularity, especially because I think Jimmy Kimmel does it, is a 5-2 model of fasting where you practice 5 days of normal eating followed by 2 days of more calorie restricted, about 500 to 600 calories.
Yes, I've seen in research that individuals in just 8 weeks can lose 3 to 8% body fat by employing that.
Pretty cool. And any of these could work, depending on your flow and your goals. And then there are a couple types of fasting, like the OMAD strategy, that I want us to unpack and maybe give our opinions on.
Sure. So OMAD stands for 1 meal a day, and an OMAD would be, just one window of eating. And some people find benefits from this as well, and they do get big increase in that HGH and some of those hormetic influencing factors. The concern that I have clinically and that I've seen with patients is that it's very difficult to get in ample protein at only one meal sitting. It's difficult for the body to assimilate or actually be able to use the nutrients consumed in only that one meal. And across the board, I recommend a minimum of 60 grams of protein a day, even when you are doing a muscle-sparing diet like a ketogenic diet and using things like fasting, because the body still requires all of those amino acids for various processes, especially when we're looking at mood optimization. So regulation of depression and anxiety, these amino acids aid in forming our neurotransmitters. And I really recommend that minimum of 60 grams a day. Otherwise, we can see also some muscle wasting that I notice personally if I go under that mark.
Sure. It's just hard to get all your food into that one meal.
Yes. And then, beyond a 24-hour fast, we have to worry about things like electrolytes. So we really want to make sure that we're using a quality mineral salt and maybe even supplementing with electrolytes. And at that level, it should be more medically monitored.
Absolutely. And then let's talk a little bit about individuals who probably shouldn't fast. So pregnant women, I would not recommend. And I'm not doing my fasting. I go max probably 12 hours, at least intentionally right now. So we don't want to fast when we're pregnant. Also, individuals who are on oral hypoglycemic drugs, they want to make sure that they're monitored by their healthcare practitioner.
Right. So those drugs would be in the diabetic drug classification. So things like metformin, these do influence, like Becki said, blood sugar dips, a hypoglycemic. And so if you are fasting, that could throw your blood sugar levels dangerously low because the medication is overriding your body's natural biochemical processes. And then the third area of concern that I would say is individuals, and also within that world of diabetics, I would say those that are on insulin that aren't, well informed on how to manage their dosage, of course. So anything that's lowering your blood sugar and overriding your natural body signals. And then the third area that I would focus on is people that have disordered eating. So if you've experienced binge and restriction, sometimes we can see overcompensation after that restricted period, and that can lead to unhealthy habits, or individuals that have had forms of anorexia or severe restriction. And so if we're getting too neurotic with our fasting, and even if it's not diagnostic of an eating disorder, but we notice that we're clock watching and our belly's grumbling and we're saying, hey, we got a couple more hours to go, and you're overriding, again, the natural signals of your body, then fasting may not be for you.
Let's unpack a couple different types of fasts and
Yes.
the people that would be appropriate to utilize these tools.
Sure. So like we said, fasting in its basic explanation is not eating. So the most kind of clear form of fasting is a pure fast, which would be just consuming water during that window. As I mentioned, I do recommend a mineral salt because this can help with your electrolytes. So using a mineral salt, and you can actually just shake it on your hand and just lick it in the morning, that can actually help with your exercise performance and give you a little surge of energy. And maintaining hydration is going to support the detoxification process, aid in your lymphatic drainage, and drive the liver flow. So drinking water would be really important throughout your fasted window. And you may consume non-caloric beverages, and this could be things like coffee or tea, or just a little bit of lemon in your water, or maybe an herb to flavor it, like basil or rosemary.
Absolutely. And you do get some enhanced benefits from the caffeine in that coffee or tea. Tea has its own subset depending on what type of tea of other beneficial compounds like the polyphenols in there. We've got a black tea here today, and tea can kind of tide over your appetite so you don't feel as hungry, just giving you something to sip on.
Yes, especially Earl Grey. So if you're someone that's dealing with a lot of hunger, the bergamot has been shown in literature to actually hold off appetite and aid in successful outcomes with fasting. But like you said, Becki, the polyphenols and the antioxidants can help to boost immune system. We see our interferon levels get elevated with polyphenols in tea. We see L-theanine in tea helping with brain regulation, and we can see an influence of enhanced body fat burn. That EGCG in green tea can be a great tool as well.
Yes, and then beyond a pure fast, one that we referenced in a prior video is a fat-fueled fast.
Yes.
So this is when we would use something like that base of coffee or tea and actually add about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of pure fat to our beverage. So here we have a keto coffee that we whipped up with about a teaspoon of grass-fed butter and 2 teaspoons of coconut oil.
So for me personally, I'm an individual that has a lower percent body fat. I don't have a lot of reserves for my body to go into when I'm in a fasted state. And so if I was to just do tea or to just do black coffee or just water, I will get an epinephrine surge or an adrenaline surge of survival essentially. And this can actually drive more anxiety in an individual such as myself. I also tend to run anxious, hence being the author of the anti-anxiety diet. And there's a hormone that I want to mention that connects the dots of as we'll go up the world of fasting beverages, and it's called leptin. Leptin is a hormone that actually translates to the word thin in the Greek language, and it regulates our satiety. So leptin is actually made in the body based on our consumption of fat. We have leptin receptors in our intestines. We can also get leptin levels from the liberation of fat when you burn your own body fat as fuel. So again, individuals that don't have a lot of body fat to lose would likely do better with adding fat to their fast and doing a fat-fueled fast so that they can maintain optimal leptin levels. Otherwise, their leptin levels can get depleted and their body will perceive starvation. This can have unfavorable effects on the thyroid. We can start to see hypothyroid. The body restricts that metabolic boost because it perceives food insecurity. And we can also see when that leptin level goes down, more anxiety, and again, that epinephrine adrenaline survival response. So these are things to be considering.
Yep. Great option for those type A people who maybe only have about 5 pounds or so or less to lose, or nothing at all.
Yes. So taking it a step further and kind of breaking doctrine, you could do something that incorporates a tea like matcha. So matcha is using a blended or a ground tea leaf. The matcha is varied from green tea because it is grown in the shade, and when we grow the tea leaves in the shade, this is going to increase the amounts of L-theanine. And again, that's that compound that really helps with our alpha brain waves. This is going to aid in concentration, focus, also creative thought process. So I'm getting my hot water in here.
This can be really a little bit more calming because of the L-theanine in there. You're getting more enhanced concentration and focus, maybe not that like jitter of caffeine.
Most definitely.
I'm a big fan of doing a matcha a couple times a week at least.
And if you haven't tried it yet, it'd be important to note that it's definitely grassier because it's ground. So instead of, steeping the tea leaves, this is that shade-grown green tea that's then ground. So you actually get higher polyphenols, higher antioxidants, higher amounts of that EGCG compound, which aids in the body fat burn, and then that L-theanine. So it's like green tea on steroids,
Totally.
but it also has a more potent flavor profile. So I always like to add fat to my matcha because that will create more of a creamy profile of flavor, I suppose, and isn't as bitey.
Absolutely.
So we're adding in, what did you put in here? Like a quarter cup of coconut milk?
Quarter cup,
Whoop.
yep.
A little splash action there. And then, so this is not a pure fast because the coconut milk is going to have a little bit of carbohydrate in there. Not much though, it's still pretty much predominant fat. But I'm adding in for this latte a scoop of collagen. So now I'm adding in some protein and amino acids. This is what Becki and I generally do, again, in her non-pregnant state, because we are really convinced on the benefits of collagen across the board. Collagen can be very supportive for our gut health. Collagen can also aid in our connective tissue, so hair, skin, and nails. I really started to incorporate it when I was pregnant and then postpartum to aid in that elasticity and give. And we've seen in studies that actually a double-blind placebo study showed that it can reduce cellulite, which, everyone will take a little.
That's convincing enough for me.
A little bit of that, yes. So I'm gonna blend this one up. So just about 45 seconds or so, enough to get a nice frothy head. So again, this is a matcha latte, which is going to have some fat, a little bit less fat than the pure fat in our fat boosted coffee, but this is going to incorporate some protein. So this is a blend of a protein and fat fast.
Yes. And then finally, we could incorporate some form of a protein sparing fast instead. So this would be for an individual who maybe does have the body fat to burn, but they're seeing muscle loss or they have goals of muscle gain potentially. And in this method, we could just incorporate the collagen as you did with the matcha, or do something like a scoop or two of grass-fed gelatin, or we could use bone broth. And bone broth is going to be typically, depending on the brand, about 10 grams or so of protein per cup.
Yes, so that's about the same as adding a scoop of either of these. And like Becki said, we would not add the fat though. So we would just be adding the collagen or gelatin to black coffee or to just green tea or just the matcha powder with water. And the bone broth kind of does it for you. We like the bone broth because that provides that connective tissue support of the collagen and gelatin, but it also has other compounds. Like bone broth is going to have N-acetylcysteine, which can aid as an expectorant, helping with mucus and phlegm and cough. We can also see glycine, which is in the gelatin and collagen, glycine and proline. And these amino acids also have very relaxing effects. But we'll have a whole show on bone broth alone because I could muse on bone broth for hours.
And so I think between all of these different tools, the keto police might get called on us, and individuals might question, is this even a fast? Or what constitutes breaking my fast? Or are you sure it's okay to incorporate protein in my fast? So let's unpack that.
Great questions. So in the most simplistic approach, the way that you can look at this gradient is on a cost to benefit ratio. So if there's a therapeutic compound that is going to best serve your body, consume it, because calorie restriction alone is going to yield you clinical outcomes. And when we're looking at good, better, best, if you're someone that has 15 pounds of weight loss or more, you likely have those body fat reserves. So you would be a good candidate for a pure fast. You just want to ensure that you may want to play with some of these stair steps until you achieve blood sugar control.
So if you liked today's video, head on down below and subscribe. And you can also find in our resource sections some of the brands that we spoke about today, such as the Wild Foods, Further Food Collagen, as well as Bonafide Provisions and Fawn Bone Broth with some exclusive discounts just for you guys.
And if you're intrigued by the concept of a bone broth fast, this is a protocol that we use in the Naturally Nourished Clinic with fantastic successful outcomes in autoimmune conditions, a boost for body fat burn, as well as just a cleanup and detox after a long girls trip weekend or vacation out of town and off eating plan. So you can go on over to alliemillerrd.com and check that out in the protocols. We've also linked that for you. And while you're at it, be sure that you subscribe so you stay on top of our weekly food as medicine videos. There's probably footage of me going like this.
It says
Okay.
look up.
Anyway, let's go.